There is something hunting people in my indoor storage facility. Part 1. This brilliant new series is written by Reddit author Haunted Nightmares. I didn't even notice it happening at first. I thought maybe I was just having a slow business year. Less and less people were showing up every day. Many of my long-time customers just stopped coming along, and I didn't know why. I know the truth now though, and I really wish I didn't. It's getting closer. I can hear the claws of its partially webbed feet clicking against the cold concrete of the building's floor. Its breathing is ragged. I can hear it sniffing around for me. It's getting close. I don't have much longer to write this. It's going to find me eventually, and when it does, no door in the world will be able to hold back its hunger. I need to get writing before my time runs out. All you need to know about me for the purposes of this story is that I own an indoor storage facility located out in the middle of rural Pennsylvania. It's located in Amish country and sticks out like a sore thumb. Just one tall, large, derelict building in the middle of fields and farms. Some of the Amish around here use it to store things, but mainly the only people that use it live in the surrounding suburbs and towns. I am the only storage facility for miles around, so that's why it struck me as odd when people began to stop showing up here. Even regulars who used to visit at least once a week began to stop showing up. I began to suspect that something funky was going on in the area. Local news channels confirmed my suspicions when they reported that some people in the surrounding towns were disappearing. What I didn't suspect though was that people were disappearing right under my nose, in the very facility I own. The first time I realised that something was wrong was when the police gave me a visit one day. They told me that some of the missing persons' families reported that their missing family members were on their way here when they disappeared. I was shocked to hear this and a little bit worried as well. If people were going missing in or around my facility, that could cause a lot of trouble for me. What if there was a serial killer hunting in my facility? What if the police tried to pin this on me and I get arrested? Even if those two things weren't true, I knew that if the police's suspicions got out to the media, it could shut me down once and for all. These reasons were why I decided to cooperate and help the police. I let them search the building. I participated in any interviews they asked me to. Hell, I even helped the police look for the missing people's cars. Issue was, I always made sure to have the towing company tow any cars that were not gone by closing hours. This was because I always had a problem with people thinking my parking lot was the perfect place to dump old cars. The police found out that a majority of the cars towed just ended up in the scrapyard after no one came to pick them up for a week or two, so that was no help. Another complication came up when I told the police I don't keep records of who enters or leaves the building. I mean, half the time I wasn't even in the facility when people came and went. I never really thought it necessary, since I've always gone by the honours system and never had an issue with doing so. Here in rural Pennsylvania, we all trusted each other to do the right thing. Eventually the police reached a dead end and the cases went cold. It seemed everyone was just trying to forget about the whole situation. Well, everyone but me. Business was really bad after all of that happened. The police's investigation got out and no one wanted to store this stuff with me anymore. Within a couple of months' time I had no more savings and had to begin the process of closing up shop. I was so angry. The police couldn't have kept their damn mouths shut about the whole thing. Maybe if they did, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in now. Hiding and holding my breath, knowing my soon-to-be demise is inevitable. It's getting closer, you know. The echoes of its footsteps seem almost deafening to me now. Its ragged breathing is getting closer by the second. Now that it's so close, I can hear how its breathing seems almost wet. It's as if the lungs of the thing are coated in mucus and water. The thing sounds sick and in pain, as though it's barely clinging on to life. Maybe that's why it's so determined to find me. Maybe if it eats me like it did the others, it won't be so pained anymore. I saw it for the first time only an hour ago. At least I think it was an hour ago. I was going through all the storage rooms, making a checklist of which rooms were empty and which rooms the junkyard needed to clean out. There are 13 floors to this facility, and by that point I was on the top floor. Floor 13 was always my least favourite floor. Not because 13 is an evil number or anything, I just didn't like it because of its level of disrepair. I had never had enough funds to be able to make sure all the floors had the same level of upkeep, so I made the decision that the higher the floor was, the less important it was. I rarely even went up to the top floor because of this. The majority of the hanging lights were either flickering or out completely. The concrete walls were cracked and crumbling along with the ceiling. The whole floor always smelled mouldy and moist, almost like it was decaying from the inside. It felt empty and foreboding, like you were never supposed to be up there in the first place. I always tried to keep my customers on the lower levels, but there were the occasional that requested higher floors for more privacy. Those people were the only reason why I had to go up there. If only I'd just told them no. By that point I had gone through all of the storage boxes except one, storage box 6D. I was both excited and sad to look in this last box. Sad because it would finalise the loss of my facility. Excited because I would finally be able to leave the floor and go home. I arrived at the door and pulled out my universal lock key. The paint on the door was crumbling and the metal was rusted pretty badly. I mean, all the floor doors looked like that, but this one was much worse than the others. Most unusual though was the moss that grew on the door. It covered a majority of the corners, but became so sporadically placed the closer you got to the middle. The smell of decay and moisture was so overwhelming I had to cover my nose with my free arm, while the other arm was busy putting the key into the rusted lock and attempting to turn it. After a couple tries, the key finally broke through the rust and the lock unlatched with a click. I took the lock off, reached down to grab the handle and lifted the storage door open to look inside. The contents of that room could only be described as a spawn of all the things unholy in the world. The smell hit me first. It was a horrible cocktail of decaying flesh, humid moisture and mould. The smell was so foul that bile shot into my throat before my eyes were even able to adjust to the darkness inside. Once they did adjust, it only became that much harder to hold the vomit down. Inside the room were thousands of bones. They covered the floor so thickly that you couldn't even see the concrete below them. Some of the bones were stripped of flesh while others still had chunks of decaying meat attached to them. Large white maggots swarmed the bones, favouring the ones with meat over the ones that didn't. The whole floor looked like a twisted, writhing mass of fleshy bodies and decay. The walls were covered in moss and blood. Some of the blood looked very old, while some looked almost fresh. There was so much of it that the moss itself looked like it grew in red. From the ceiling hung a singular moss-covered lamp that was flickering weakly, covering the room with its dim golden glow. Despite all these horrors though, there was one that stood out from the rest. In the middle of the room was a large nest. It seemed to be weaved out of scavenged wire, moss and bones. The thing seemed to cover a majority of the centre of the room. It must have been at least 6 foot in diameter and 3 feet high. It looked rotten and in disrepair, as though its creator was too preoccupied with other things to take care of it. Most horrid was the creature that sat in the centre of the nest, gnawing at something I couldn't see. It was hunched over, facing away from me. It was humanoid in shape, but much larger than any human could ever be. Hunched over, it was at least 6 feet and barely avoided touching the ceiling. I knew that, standing up, it must be at least double the height. Sickly, almost translucent grey skin revealed itself where patches of moss didn't cover the thing's back. The dim light reflected off its uncovered skin, revealing to me a sheen that indicated it was incredibly slimy. The back of its head was much like its back, hairless, moist, grey and covered in patches of moss. Its whole body moved in sync with its head, twisting and turning to help the head get the most out of whatever it was eating. I froze in place, trying to not make a sound. It didn't know I was there yet, and I wanted to keep it that way. I slowly began backing up, trying to be as careful and silent as possible. Despite this, I found myself accidentally backing up into a chain that hung from the door. It clattered as my body collided with it, sounding echoes throughout the empty halls. The creature froze at the sound before slowly beginning to turn around to face me. The first thing I noticed was that it had no eyes. Smooth grey skin covered where you would imagine eyes to be. The skin was so smooth, in fact, it left no indication that eyes were supposed to be there in the first place. The only thing that came to mind at that moment was cave creatures. Oftentimes the creatures evolved over time to not have eyes because the darkness wouldn't allow much use for them. I also know that they make up for their lack of sight in heightened hearing, taste and smell. Floor 13 was very similar to a cave. It was damp, moist, dark and hid creatures so bizarre and terrifying you couldn't come up with them in your wildest dreams. The next thing I noticed was its mouth. It was almost as though someone took a knife and carved a smile into the thing's head before filling it with hundreds of small, foot-long, needle-sharp teeth. Its smile stretched from ear to ear, which were made up of 2 giant black holes in the sides of its head. Its mouth was still bloody from whatever it was eating. I looked down to its large, webbed, clawed hands to see it was still holding the mangled, partially decayed corpse of a customer I could no longer recognize. I looked up to its face one more time, horrified and trying not to move, hoping that it would just forget about me and going back to eating whoever that was. But it didn't. When I looked up to its face, I saw it bare its teeth and stretch its lips into a toothy smile. At that moment I knew that it had just decided on its next meal. I turned and bolted, trying to navigate the endless empty hallways of floor 13. My panic-stricken brain could no longer recognize the layout of the floor. I had devolved into just running around in a looped pattern, too afraid to deviate from its safe endlessness. I couldn't risk running into a dead end. All throughout this, I could hear it chasing me, always only a couple of seconds behind. It ran on all fours, and even in this position, it was big enough to take up the majority of the small, cramped hall. The combined slap of its webbed appendages and click of its bony fingernails on the cold concrete floor sent shockwaves of panic through me and kept my adrenaline pumping. It let out a gargled screeches ever so often just to remind me it was still there, that it was still chasing me. At some point I was able to gain a bit of distance between me and it. I turned a corner just fast enough to get out of its line of sight and was lucky enough to encounter a storage box I opened previously and forgot to close. So that's where I am now, hiding in a storage box while that thing hunts me outside. I can hear the click of its fingernails right outside the door now, and it's laughing. Oh God, it's laughing. It sounds sickly and wet and gargled, but make no mistake, it's laughing. It knows it's won. Click, click, click. It just tapped on the door 3 times. I don't have much longer now. I'm soon going to be joining that mangled corpse it was gnawing on earlier. I'm going to be joining all the customers it hunted before me in these empty, decayed halls. Please, oh God, please no. Bang! 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 It's bashing its body into the door now. I'm backed up into the back corner of the room with my body pressed into the corner. The cold concrete is freezing in comparison to my overheated body. I'm watching as it crashes into the steel and makes huge dents in the steel door. I don't have much time before the door gives in. Oh God, I don't want to die. What am I going to do? Wait, is that a floor vent? Wow, that was an epic episode. If you enjoyed listening to this instalment, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile, Haunted Nightmares, and drop them a line or even give them a glowing review. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed my narration, then please feel free to like and share my video. Leave a comment below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap that notification bell and then select all. So that way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters, or even had a creepy or terrifying situation you would like to share? Have you even written a CreepyPasta story that you would like me to narrate? You can submit all your stories and encounters to Cryptids Roost at gmail.com. And if you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. Now I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit, and I'm also on Discord, although I don't have my own server. And again, all the relevant links will be below. If you would like to support the channel and make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/Cryptids Roost. Again, that'll all be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.